Let's go back to what's going on with the economy. One of the more popular videos on your channel, it's got almost 700,000 views on it, and the title is "The Global Elite's Great Reset Agenda."
Uh,
Can you talk a little bit about? And that video is about a year old, so maybe you can kind of like update some thoughts on that, today on what you think's going on with guys like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and the Great Reset. What are your
sure.
thoughts on that?
Well, I actually just did a presentation on this at Mark Moss's event in Dallas, so it's kind of fresh on my mind. And I think, to make a short story long here, you've got to start by going back to 1513, the year. And this is when Machiavelli wrote his book called The Prince. And if any of your viewers or listeners haven't read the book or at least watched like a documentary, you got to do it.
The book's
It's
called The Prince.
The Prince. Yeah, it's only about 90 pages.
Okay.
And basically, back then, kind of the mainstream narrative, if you will, is that what made a good leader or a king or a prince was integrity, was honesty,
Hmm.
was virtue, all of these things. And Machiavelli was the first one that came out and said, you're lying to yourself. That the way you stay in power as a politician is by doing the opposite of that. If you want to do good, you've got to be willing to be bad. Ethically, you got to abandon all morals. You've got to be willing to go against your word. You've got to be ruthless. You have to do these things, or else you're A, not even going to get into power, and B, if you get there, you're not going to keep your position of power. So, fast forward to the 1900s, and several of the dictators were very, very influenced by Machiavelli. Hitler, Stalin, just to name a few. John Gotti used to reference The Prince all the time.
Mm.
And it had a massive impact on a gentleman by the name of Henry Kissinger. So much so that one of the more recent versions of The Prince, it's still in print today, the cover of it has Henry Kissinger on the cover.
Mm.
And so now we go to 1967, and Klaus Schwab takes a class or a seminar from Kissinger at Harvard, and he said that was one of the greatest impacts on his life. And Kissinger back then was saying things like, one of his famous quotes, like, "If you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control countries. If you control money, you control the world." And so then you've got Klaus saying that Kissinger was one of the biggest influences on his entire life. Now we go back a little bit to the 1800s, and there's another gentleman there by the name of Thomas Malthus. And so if you've ever heard the term Malthusian, it started with Thomas Malthus, and he was the first one to really articulate this view where if the global population increased exponentially, that would lead to significant problems because we live in a world of limited resources. And so he actually argued for, controlling the birth rate, to
Hmm.
put it mildly, maybe even depopulating. He argued why war was a good thing because it would wipe out half the population, and that's better because now we're not constrained by or we're temporarily dodged a bullet as far as being constrained by the resources relative to the population. I mean, these are things that he would say out loud.
Hmm.
And it since then, it's been very popular with the intellectual elite, right? So you fast forward to 1968, there's a group that was set up called the Club of Rome. And they're basically just taking Malthus ideas and just kind of repackaging them for the modern age. And Klaus Schwab was very, very moved and influenced by the Club of Rome as well, to the point where in 1972, he set up the World Economic Forum in 1971. It
Hmm.
was called something different. But in 72, he had the gentleman who set up the Club of Rome to do a speech on his most recent paper called Limits to Growth. And I'm sorry, the paper came out in 72. He did the speech at the World Economic Forum in 73. So limits to growth became kind of a worldwide phenomenon. And again, it was just regurgitating these ideas, these Malthusian ideas. And so much so that MIT actually turned it into a computer program where they projected the end of the world based
Mm-hmm.
on human population growth, pollution, and damage to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 91, the Club of Rome, which still exists today, came out with another paper that was wildly popular that kind of re-articulated their views, but then said the only solution is not at a local level. It's not at an individual level. It's not at a state level. It's not at a country level. The only way you're going to solve this is through central planning and basically a global government. And this echoed a lot of the thoughts from Henry Kissinger as well. So then when you fast forward to today, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers have seen the clips of Bill Gates talking about how there's a big problem with the population going from 7 billion up to 9 billion or 12 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just him looking at the Club of Rome and being influenced by Klaus Schwab. And this is just a Malthusian idea that he also is taken to heart and really thinks that, sure, okay, Malthus kind of got it wrong in the 1800s. We figured out some solutions there. And maybe the Club of Rome was early, but by 2050, this is definitely going to impact the world. So, being a megalomaniac and these people thinking that they are superior genetically and intellectually to the other 7 billion people on Earth, they figure that if they can't solve the problem, then we can't solve the problem collectively either. The free market cannot do this. So you've got two options: either you reduce the energy use or you reduce the birth rate, or ideally you do both.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when you look at everything that's happening in the world, whether it's the Great Reset agenda, whether it's the government's response to we'll call it the cerveza sickness, keep it YouTube friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Even right there, Trudeau. Trudeau is just a pawn of Klaus Schwab. I mean, the way you know this is because when you hear Klaus Schwab speak and hear Trudeau speak, he uses the exact same words. It's like it's a script that they're given, and
it's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, exactly. And Biden does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So we go into this world where we are today, where you're looking at what they're doing. And I would go so far as to say Russia as well. You look at that, and you look at this push towards wokeism as another thing. And this is something that I've seen very, very few people connect the dots, and it's definitely applicable to your channel. You talk about this all the time. But I think that one of the reasons the global elite, and now they're in bed with the corporations as well, one of the reasons why they're pushing this woke agenda so much is because it reduces the birth rate. And if you just look at their three main objectives, and I've kind of done a lot of thinking on this, and I think you can really summarize it by saying, the reduction in energy, like we were saying, the reduction in the birth rate, and then usurping power, control, and wealth. So if you look at either a woke agenda through that,
softens the population and it makes it more compliant too.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that their reaction to the cerveza sickness was a big step forward for them to condition people to basically believing in absurdities, you look at all the absurdities throughout the mainstream narrative right now, and the more you can get people to believe in what is just ridiculous, the more power and control you have over their daily life. And, even looking at what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, why is it that the media is just so hell-bent on the U.S. getting involved with Russia? Why isn't it something, like Afghanistan, or why isn't it something that where the media is not paying as much attention to it like they have in wars in the past? And you say, oh, it's about, Putin invading a democratic society. Okay. I think if you look at the propaganda around this, and we see it recently with this push towards Sweden and Finland joining NATO, and I think that it's because the global elite want the United States to get involved because it helps them achieve those three objectives. Look at it through that lens. Is it going? Look what's happening in Europe right now. They're having to ration natural gas. They're having to ration energy use. They're having to ration electricity. Okay, what's objective number one? Check that box. Okay, we go into a nuclear war. Okay, check box number two. Decreases the birth rate in the population, that's for sure. And then if we go into a war, who are the entities that benefit from that? It would be the global elite, the politicians. The people are the ones, especially the poor and middle class, that always end up paying the price. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're behind everything, but the title of my presentation at Mark's event was "Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste."
Mm.
And I think that they've got these objectives, and then when a crisis presents itself, they sit back and say, okay, we influence this politician, this corporate head, this CEO, this hedge fund manager, these people that come to Davos. So, and this, mainstream media outlet. So how can we position a narrative around this crisis and implement policy that'll help us achieve one, two, or all three of those objectives we just outlined?
Hey guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that short clip. If you did, consider supporting the creation of content by checking out my supplement line. Pinned in the top comment below of this video in the comments, there's a link to the unpluggedalpha.com/shop. When you click through, you'll be able to land over here, and the entire lineup is broken down by category that it performs best in: estrogen metabolism, fat burning, your foundational essentials for health, immune health, performance, and testosterone support. If you check out with coupon code ALPHA10, you'll get 10% off on your first order. There's also the option to use the subscribe and save model, where regular shipments will be sent over to you on a regular basis, and that gives you a little bit of a discount, and your supplement facts are always broken down over here. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys have an awesome day. And again, check out that link. It's pinned in the top comment below in this video. Peace out.